that's one of the things that made me convinced that Louisa planned from the beginning that Joe ends up with Fritz. And she crafted Frederick's character specifically for Joe. In that book, the whole storyline, it's very similar to Joe and Frederick in Little Woman. And I was so fascinated when I read White Word because it felt like I was reading Joe's and Frederick's story in like another dimension. It's really uncanny. It's very, very Christian book, many Christian moralities, but the dynamic between the leading lady and the romantic interest, they are very much the same. What's the name of it? White World by Susan Warner. It's an American book from 1850. It was one of the first American feminist books, and I found it so fascinating. Joe is reading that book in Little Woman in chapter 11, I think. And she's reading that in a tree, and she's crying because it's so moving. And Joe actually reads romance novels.
Yeah, so she's not averse to romance.
Yeah.
She just wants it in a certain way.
She wants an equal romance. She wants someone who respects her. The White Bird is interesting because it's about these two people trying to find a balance in that relationship.
Yeah, no, it's a value that Louisa May Alcott really espouses in all of her books. We get hints go early on that Joe, she likes a certain idea of romance, does not or how Laurie exhibits it. Like, so why do you think that? I think you will probably know more about this. So why do you think Louisa May Alcott would later write that, like, oh, Joe should have been like a literary spinster or say something like that?
She wrote it to her friend Elizabeth Powell, who was 16 years at the time. Elizabeth was Louisa's friend. I think she was a teacher in a school where Louisa was studying with her sister. And Louisa was much older than she was. And based on what I know, Elizabeth was very against marrying. And she was 16, well, it makes sense that you don't want to marry someone when you're 16, even in the 19th century. And I think Louisa specifically crafted that letter for Elizabeth. Daniel Sheary, who is an Alcott scholar, he has done some extensive research about this. It's really worth reading. Elizabeth did get married a decade later. She was like 26 when she married. And it seems that her relationship was quite happy and she had 2 sons and she became a dean of a school. I think Louisa used Elizabeth as an inspiration for Joe's character in first part of Little Woman and in the sequels because this actually sounds a lot like Joe's and Friedrich's relationship as well.
Yeah.
But it was Elizabeth who Louisa wrote this letter that she gave Joe a funny match. But then she also writes in that letter that she's really frustrated about the little girls who want her to marry Joe to Laurie, because that was never Louisa's intention. People have taken that out of context. When Louisa herself was 15, she actually wrote love letters to her friend Emerson, who was 30 years older than she was. He was her first love, maybe her first crush. And she was very different to Joe in that sense because she was very romantic and very sentimental. But then I have also done research on Louisa's love for Henry David Thoreau, who I believe was one of the main models for Frederick. And it's really uncanny how Henry comes out as in literal disguises in all of Louisa's novels. I think she wrote Joe to be an idealized version of herself because when I read Little Woman last time, Joe is not really as angry as she is in the movies, especially in the recent movies like the 2019 film or the 2017 series when she snaps out time to time.
Yeah.
But the book Joe, she's not that angry. People always say that Louisa had like anger issues and such. I think in the 19th century context, whenever a woman would get angry, would have been labeled something terrible. It has a lot to do with the way we read history and the way we approach Louisa's character. Joe is definitely a combination of the woman who Louisa admired.
Yeah, I think it's funny with the anger issues because I think it's more about how she talks back at people. So I think it was the whole incident with Amy falling in the pond. I think she was just like, oh, in my anger, I left my sister behind and I almost let her die. I think it's that sort of thing where she's kind of governed by her feelings rather than her head. And I think that's more what they're getting at. Because I think, Marmee, she's kind of a parallel to Marmee, it's because Marmee dealt with a lot of this when she was younger, she was always trying to hold back on her emotions and that's how Joe's father became a good foil to her. Joe's father was able to kind of calm her down, and then became harder again when they were poor because it's so hard for her to see her daughters be financially struggle and have to work. Characters don't take part in shaping these characters. Like these girls, these other people were necessary for them to grow.
Yeah, that's very true. And it applies to John and Meg, it applies to Amy and Laurie, and especially to Fritz. When Louisa was asked by her publisher to write a book to girls about good marriage matches, in the 19th century, German immigrants, they were really discriminated in the US. So she's also including this social aspect to the book, which I didn't realize until I started to do this research. I was really blown away by the German connections in Little Woman. Pretty sure that Louisa was a hardcore Germanophile.
Yeah, and look, what I still think I love about the 1984 adaptation is like when she's like, oh well, my family was we're a family of transcendentalists, and that Friedrich's like, yeah, well, that's all the German philosophy, and this is what we were getting at.
And I love that scene so much. And I was so angry because Gerig's version, it did include this intellectual thirst that Joe has. Also in the 1949 film, in a way, Joe, she wants to study German. And it's not as good as in the 1994 film, but you can see that she has this intellectual curiosity towards Professor.
You can kind of see it with like he sort of opens for horizons of big enough music.
Yeah, and they go to the opera and everything. And I like that in the film, Friedrich is actually singing, and he's singing a song from, it's a song from Goethe, I think. That's a direct link to Louisa and her love for Goethe and all these philosophers who she was in love with. I really like that.
No, I love it when the film understands Fritz like that. If people think that, and I think you've pointed out in your blog post, or maybe another blog post did, or another article, but Pretty Fair, he was not a conventional on choice at all. Like even the choice of marrying someone like that was considered pretty out there because he was a German immigrant, like you said, and he had come from this position of respect to this kind of position of poverty. And for her to marry this guy who's not as well established in that country is probably discriminated against, and to make that choice, I mean that was not conventional. That's not someone just knuckling down to to society's demands. That's just a choice that wouldn't be expected of you at the time, and it's also very fitting of Joe because she's an unconventional woman, so she married an unconventional man.
Yeah, one of the Little Women fans who I interviewed for my articles, she pointed out that this unconventionality of Frederick that Joe is really attracted to because Joe always feels very unconventional herself, and that is why she doesn't fit to the circles in Concord. Joe being this female writer in a times when there aren't that many female writers, she finds this charismatic, eccentric professor. He doesn't really fit in, but he doesn't struggle with it the same way as Joe is struggling.
She respects hard work.
Yeah.
That's why she can't really respect Laurie at that point, or be with him because Laurie doesn't work. Laurie can't relate to how Joe works hard.
He kind of resents Joe's writing in the book as well, and you can see bits of that in the 1994 film, like in the one sentence, but still. At least it's included. In the book, you can really see that he's distracting her when she's writing. And then when...
Hello, friends. It is Niina from the Little Woman podcast. Just to let you all know that the Little Woman podcast episode transcripts are now available as books. You can find them as paperbacks and ebooks. They are wonderful reading for all the fans of Louisa May Alcott. You can find all the links from the description. And now, back to the show.
Laurie's proposing to Joe. Joe is like, you are not going to like my writing, but you never have to write again in your life. like money resolves everything, but Jo wants to write. Friedrich wants her to write. Like, I don't understand these people who say that Friedrich somehow prevents Jo from writing. Like, yeah, he wants Jo to write. He wants Jo to be the best writer in the world. And he gives her Shakespeare's books so Jo can study characters. He just doesn't like sensational stories because he thinks that Jo has much more potential.
When people say, "Oh no, he made it so that she wouldn't write," and I'm like, no.
But in all the movies, they don't include that chapter in the beginning of Little Women Part 2 when Jo is actually starting to write those sensational stories. From the beginning, she knows that it's really bad writing. She does it for the money and she tries to justify it for herself. But she doesn't feel content by that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think, because people criticize Friedrich for being elitist and, criticize for writing genre fiction when, when she really needed to do it for the money. And I'm just like, well, the whole point, like Louise, like even phrases it such that it's not good for Jo to write like that. It puts her in a bad state of mind when she is churning out sensationalist stories just for the money because it's not authentic to her. And Friedrich, he doesn't really directly like make her do anything. He left it up to her. Like he never made anything.
Alcott, Schooler, and Nacini wrote it very well, I think, when she said that when Louisa was younger, in her 20s, she wrote those potboiler stories, but Louisa didn't have anyone to guide her. And you can see that in Little Woman that she wants that there's someone who actually looks at her work, takes it more seriously, and gives her some advice on what to do. And she did it in secret. Later in life, Louisa didn't want to have anything to do with those stories. Now, I have read some of them, and I like some of them. Some of those stories are not that great. So she was practicing her writing. That's okay. But then she's also aware that she's not doing the best of work, and then she's really ashamed to show them to anyone.
She didn't want to be limited.
Yeah, it's really impressive when you read that Friedrich is giving Jo these advices how she can improve, and then Jo actually writes different genres. She tries poetry and children's books and all of that. Then she has a creative break. I'm an illustrator. That comes when I take creative breaks. You need that in order to improve yourself. Amy does that as well in the book. Like she tries sculpting watercolors and oils. Like
wood burning.
Yeah, she does it all. That's the way it goes when you're an artist. You try different things.